No. Timpani, right at the beginning. That appoggiatura is not on the beat. I want to hear it before. Drum. Also, I like exaggerations. I like piano exaggerations, the principle with me, and I like when it's got bite. Now let's try just the very beginning. Roll. Don't disappear so fast. Wait.
Composer Nicolas Flagello is rehearsing Odyssey, his latest work. 6 months earlier, Marice Stith, conductor of the Cornell University Wind Ensemble, commissioned Mr. Flagello to write a piece for them and to conduct the premiere. It is now the day before the performance. Mr. Flagello has just arrived. He has several hours to rehearse the group, to adjust details of tempo, balance, and phrasing. Odyssey was completed less than 2 months before the day of the performance. Once the music had been sent off to Cornell, Mr. Flagello described how the piece took shape and shared some insights into the way he composes.
I must have thought about the piece about 4 or 5 months, just thinking about it. I ferment like good wine. And sometimes fermentation takes a long time. I compose away from the piano, so I'm listening to tones. I usually let the muses grab a hold of me and take me where they want. But I do use the piano. I check things. Sometimes after a long siege of writing a lot of notes, I just have to clear the air a little bit and I play what I've written. And then I go back to the desk. My job is to hold the reins and not just put anything down that I feel like. I put it down with a great deal of caution. And it must flow and seem natural to me. If it seems natural to me, it will seem natural to whoever the listener is. I'm objective when I do this, by the way.
While beginning work on Odyssey, Mr. Flagello learned of the earthquake that had just devastated southern Italy. He decided to make his new work a memorial to the many who died in this disaster.
I did not intend to write an earthquake piece, and it isn't. I used it as a vehicle in order for me to compose. My roots are in that particular area where it happened, and I felt. And I have my family there and making phone calls and trying to find out if anything happened to them. As I said, so many people had died and lost their homes. And I'm sort of a recipient of certain feelings. I get vibes from everything. So my vibes started with this idea. I got this sort of stately, somber feeling. The first thing that came to me was... To me, that's somber, and it's exactly what I wanted to do. I have an opera that's called The Judgment of St. Francis. In Odyssey, I used an interval which opens my St. Francis, which is only a second. It would be this tone. You probably can hear the relationship to the St. Francis motive, which opens the opera with... There is a very close proximity from one step to the other, but I'm interested more in this. Now, for some reason, those two notes suddenly to me become very religious God tones, and I have used them over and over again. Now, I did that inadvertently. Again, fermentation. You see, the mind goes back to something, and it's something that probably was very much on my subconscious mind. I had two ideas that I was working with. One is secondary to the other. Well, the first idea, as I mentioned before, was the half step. I transformed that to this. Now that's completely transformed, but it is based on the first idea. So there, you see it's in the top line. So you have, now that's the composite line. There are two lines involved. One is the motion line, and one is the one that's pinpointed. But I have it two ways, by the way. I have the bass line, which is on a B flat, and a B natural on the top, and then I invert them, and the top becomes B flat, and the bottom becomes B natural. As a matter of fact, now that I'm talking to you, I didn't even know I did it. But you see, at a particular point, your mind takes over you. When you get to the point that you don't calculate what you're doing, and you find a great deal that comes out in your music that you have no rhyme or reason for, study what you have done and see if you find yourself there. Odyssey came about like that in a lot of ways, and I went very quickly in doing this. At that point, when I was writing this, I didn't know what I was going to do. And then I realized this whole samba section became the introduction to the composition. Now comes another part that is a little bit more florid. As you can see, that's more melodious. That is my secondary idea. By the way, this theme may sound Middle Eastern. Italy is surrounded by the Mediterranean. So therefore, if you take this, and you'll find this in Greece, you'll find this in all the Arab countries, in Italy, in Spain, southern France, Yugoslavia, Albania. I am the child of people from this area, in which I've lived for many, many years. So I feel that kind of sound, and it's almost inevitable that it would seep into my musical thinking. What I use is sometimes called the Neapolitan scale. I used it because Naples is a part of Italy hit by the earthquake. I'll play this slowly. Right here. Those notes. But I put against that, and it purifies itself. Against all those scales, what it does is develop the ideas I put together before. At certain points, I have, for instance, just a harmonic relationship, which becomes, or I have, and then here's the half step. Again, and I hold it, and then I go into the other aberration. All right, taking those triplet figures that I use, I have this as an accompaniment to that melodic line comes out that I showed before. Finally, at one point in the composition, I find that I can't keep always pushing like this, and I have to have this repose, and I have to remind the listener again of... Now the half step becomes a whole step. Then a minor third. And you hear also throughout the piece. In composition, very rarely do I jump ahead. In this case, I was almost at the end. I just sort of knew what I wanted to do, and I felt inspired, and one of the muses must have hit me at that point, and I did jump because I was not worried what materials I was going to use to bridge into that ending. I just decided, no, I better just do this because I'll forget it. So I wrote down very quickly a plan, which my sketches are very skimpy, as you can see. But to go fast, I did that. And it worked out, because the rest was very easy. And ending it, it's very, very slow. And it starts again with the half step. And Naturally, now it's further developed. I repeat it, and then I go off a little bit, and I interject the other melodic line. And then I change the harmonies. And I further expand it. And I put that inside the ensemble. Then it reaches a peak, which is about the most mammoth sound in the piece. It's nothing but a half-step scale going down, but each one of them is connected. And then it comes in on. That strident kind of chord. I finish it off with a sudden blast of just one note C. It's a thud, really. And it's a very stark ending. So the whole piece really is based on those few elements. I started out to write a very short piece. And then I thought it was going to be a much longer piece. The score, as it exists now, is changed from my sketches. I usually go through the piece without singing or playing to find out what the continuity is like to me. And at that point, I took out one complete repeat of materials, and it suddenly became a little tighter. I do this all the time as I'm working the final draft. And the very ending is the only place that I call hope, but as a very marked, somber reminder of what is and can be. Even though I may have had something that was very mellifluous first and very melodic leading to that, I don't want people to forget that life has not always turned out to be a bowl of roses. There is a great deal of strife in the piece, and you can feel pain. I mean, I feel the pain. The feeling of the ground moving so quickly underneath your feet and the tremors, that comes suddenly in a second. The piece probably has this because there are sudden changes which are drastic, vehement, and strong, very strong. And then there is the letdown. And then slowly it builds up again. Well, isn't this true of all of us who've had a tremendous scare? And then you start to breathe again, and you move fast. So that probably is what I intended. Now, that's my personal feelings about the piece. I don't think I could do it justice speaking about it and meandering a little bit on the piano, but it gives an effect of what I think I tried to do.
How long did the actual writing take?
You don't start in the morning and end at night and do it every day. Sometimes I can't do that. I have other duties. But I would say, all in all, it was about 3.5 weeks.
What about the orchestration? Is that a separate step?
I don't worry about the orchestration. I make a sketch. Most people can't understand it because I use shorthand for myself to go fast.
After the sketch is done, Mr. Flagello orchestrates the piece directly onto the full score.
I know an overall sound. I know what I want, and which I'll never forget once I see the same notes. And Odyssey does take in a huge complex of instruments. You've got to see that whole picture in front of your eyes, and then you can see what's missing, what needs to be added.
Most composers write their original manuscripts on a special kind of erasable paper from which permanent copies can be made. Once the orchestration is complete, every instrumental part has to be copied onto a separate piece of paper so that there's one for each player. The laborious job of copying must be done by hand. Many composers use a professional music copyist, although some do the parts themselves. Finally, a copy of the score and parts was sent to Professor Stith at Cornell. Once the music arrived, Professor Stith began rehearsing the work, so that the musicians would be familiar with the piece and with their individual parts by the time Mr. Flagello arrived.
I could tell after the first reading that the students were going to like it. Each time they played it, they were more enthusiastic about it. And I think it's a terrific contribution to the band literature.
The enthusiasm of the group is evident in their responsiveness to the composer and his suggestions. They enjoy his informal, unpretentious manner and cooperate wholeheartedly.
That was good. Let me see if it was an accident.
The rehearsal lasts several hours. By the end of the afternoon, the ensemble has thoroughly absorbed Mr. Flagello's concept of the piece. And he is confident that the following day's performance will be a good one. Later on, Mr. Flagello and his friends spend the evening with Professor Stith. They listen together to recordings of the day's rehearsals and share their observations. It's still not too late to make suggestions concerning matters of tempo or balance, which may enhance the impact of the piece. Mr. Flagello is receptive to these suggestions and later makes note of details to mention before the performance. It is now the day of the concert. As the auditorium fills up, Professor Stith makes some announcements, while Mr. Flagello waits in the wings. Soon it is time for the concert to begin, and Mr. Flagello walks on stage to conduct the first performance of his Odyssey. With the strident chord and stark final note described by Mr. Flagello, Odyssey comes to an end. He motions for the players to stand and share in the enthusiastic applause.
I thought it went pretty well. You know it right away as soon as they start. They're all looking at you and they want to make sure nothing goes wrong. It's a very cooperative bunch.